to a courtroom. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Wayne Brenda, Producing Artistic Director of Prime Stage Theater, and I'd like to welcome you to this very, very special Monday night special that we're doing for our season. And tonight we are very honored to have Mike Perry present Saving Face, the memoir of a clown. Thank you.
Again in my usual flair. My big entrance. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I wanted to say a few words before we begin tonight because some of you might not be familiar with storytelling. Storytelling is the ability to tell a story without notes, usually without props. Usually. I wanted to thank you for coming this evening. This is a project close to my heart, and I've been wanting to do it forever. So let's give a round of applause to Prime Stage for letting me have this opportunity. There's an old joke when you eat Chinese food, when you open the cookie, you have to add a phrase. And I thought tonight the phrase would be, of clowns. Yeah, so for example, see this set? Witness of the prosecution.
Of clowns.
Kind of scary. You're young, you'll get over it. Well, I'd like to start tonight, but let me say a few more words before I do. In the lobby, on my list of shameless promotion, I have thumb drives that work beautifully in your car if you're ever bored. And they contain stories that I've written. I asked for a $15 donation, and they're out there. If you choose, I will have a 10-minute intermission after the first half, followed by the second. It should run about an hour. Any questions? Good. The old man would have you believe that he told me this story, but I'm going to set it straight right now. I knew it long before he appeared in my life. Otto Griebling. Otto Griebling was a circus clown, well respected by circus people of the same ilk, the same era as another man you may have heard of named Emmett Kelly. Otto was a tramp, a hobo clown. The stories of him are endless. The one I like the best is when he was interviewed in his older age. He said, Otto, how long have you been with the show? Well, he said, pretty much my whole life except for 2 years. He said, I wasn't much more than a boy working for a horse trainer. He wasn't nice to me, he wasn't nice to the horses, and quite frankly, I didn't like him either. One day he called me over and said, son, get over here. I want you to go to the store, buy 2 quarts of milk, 2 loaves of bread. Here's $5. Be quick about it, boy. Well, Otto was a farm boy at heart. In Madison, Wisconsin, he walked a mile or so to the store, and passing a dairy farm, he thought, this is a well-kept farm. I have a strong back. Maybe they're hiring. And he got a job as a farmhand. About 2 years went by. The show came back to town. Otto knew something was missing. Was it adventure? Was it being in a different city? Doesn't matter. The show came to town. The man was surprised when he opened his door and there stood Otto with 2 quarts of milk and 2 loaves of bread. The store was closed, he said. The man counted his change and said, don't just stand there, get back to work. Circus is filled with stories. The old man liked to tell them, where he came from, I don't know. He just appeared one day in my peripheral. Who's that guy? Didn't want to know. So I ignored him. But he kept appearing. The guy was persistent. Over time, I figured, okay, if he's going to show up, I'm just going to take a back seat. That old man would show up at family picnics. He'd show up at funerals. He'd show up wherever I was. There he was. Who is this guy? I studied him. I liked him. How could you not like him? He could work a room. He would walk in short order. He'd be sitting at a table, knew everybody's name. On the way home, he'd say to his wife, you know that girl I was talking to, her dad lived down the street from my uncle, and he would tell all these, and she'd say, oh man, how do you know this? Well, he said, you gotta listen. She laughed. You gotta listen, she said. Every time I looked up, you were the one doing the talking. I listened. They were both right. The old man did, in fact, like to listen to people. Liked to tell a few stories, too. I wondered, how do you do that? How do you go from listening to telling a story? I watched. I learned. He had what I call the insidious switch. Here's how it works. He would introduce himself. He would get someone talking. He was curious. What'd you do for a living? That's fascinating. Tell me more. Who doesn't like to talk about themselves? That's rhetorical. People would be talking, and then all of a sudden, whether they ran out of breath, they forgot what came next, ran out of story, didn't matter. There was that pause in the conversation. Time for the insidious switch. That's when the old man would say something appropriate like, you know, that happened to me once. He was off and running. He had exactly 2 subjects, circus and clowning, close to his heart. Somehow it always circled back to the 2 subjects, circus, clowning. One day someone said something about the World Trade Centers. Funny thing, you should mention that, said the old man. You know, 50 years ago, in 1974, in the summer, those buildings were just being completed. He said, and a little guy I called Little Phil. Little Phil was an amazing man. Spoke French, as a matter of fact, and he was kind of little. He saw these World Trade Centers. He got this crazy idea. You see, Little Phil was a funambulist. He was a jongleur. He was a magician. He was a pickpocket. Little Phil got his hands on someone's ID card. Not anyone's ID card. Someone who worked in the World Trade Centers. It was an ant farm of activity. People going up and down elevators. There were steam fitters and drywall fitters and people with helmets. Nobody knew what they did. That was his plan. He got his cadre together. He split them in half. All right, you guys, you go up in Tower 1. You go up in Tower 2. Over time, his plan came together. They mingled